Wings beneath the sky. For Dad. For every ride through the wild, every fire under the stars, and every time you showed me how to be brave. This story is for the moments we shared and for the promise that one day we'll share them again. Prologue. Echoes of the Past. The wind moved gently through the fields of Nagrand, curling through the grass like a whispered hymn. Distant islands floated in lazy silence above, casting long, slow-moving shadows across the land. And in the stillness, beneath the gathering dusk, a single figure stood alone. Yarmin, priestess of the light, closed her eyes and breathed in the warm air. The smell of wildflowers and riverstone wrapped around her like a memory. She had stood on this very cliff before, long ago, with laughter in her ears, dust on her robes, and a chopper parked not far from where she now stood. That day had felt endless, full of color, joy, and the kind of peace most only dream of. The Meganeer's chopper had been a gift, gleaming, growling, and absurdly loud, a ridiculous, beautiful contraption of metal and oil, crafted by goblins and gnomes who understood that speed wasn't just about getting somewhere. It was about feeling alive along the way. And he had loved it. She could still hear the engine rumble, echoing off the canyon walls. But tonight, the sky was different, the colors deeper, the silence heavier, the stars above shimmered with stories untold, waiting. She reached into the satchel at her hip and pulled out a journal, its edges worn, the pages full of notes and pressed herbs. Tucked carefully between two pages was a single flower. Softly glowing, silver blue, delicate as breath. Her fingers lingered on it. "You always picked the brightest one," she whispered, voice barely louder than the wind. The silence answered her, not with emptiness, but with presence. A warmth that touched her heart like a familiar embrace. A promise, unspoken. She looked to the heavens, where floating islands gave way to stars. Somewhere beyond them, she was waiting. "This isn't the end," Yarmin said softly, a smile brushing her lips. "It's just where the story begins." Chapter 1. The Chopper and the Valkyrie. The engine growled low, steady as a heartbeat. Wheels kicked up dust as Yarmin raced across the open plains of Nagrand, her Mechaneer's chopper roaring over the grass and stone. Wind tugged at her long black hair, which flowed behind her like a silken banner, her blunt bangs occasionally fluttering into her eyes. The silver trim on her priest robes caught the sunlight with every bounce. Above her, like a shadow and a sunrise rolled into one, Astrid Ironsong soared. Wings of white spread wide, she glided in lazy loops, twisting and diving through the air with that effortless grace only a Valkyrie could claim. The gold of her armor glinted as she turned her head downward, eyes catching sight of her companion below. "Still think that thing counts as a holy relic?" Astrid called, voice echoing across the wind. Yarmin grinned, not looking up. "It gets me where I need to go, plus it rattles demons when I rev it near temples." Astrid let out a laugh that rolled like thunder. "That's blasphemy, priest." "Then bless it for me," Yarmin shouted back, twisting the throttle. The chopper leapt forward with a surge of sound, and Astrid dove after her, wings tucked close in a graceful pursuit. They had done this before, many times, but this time felt different. There was something in the air today, not just the scent of wildflowers or the song of the wind. Something quieter, under the surface. But neither of them spoke of it yet. They raced across the field until they reached the rise near Talar, where the land curved into a gentle cliff overlooking a clear, winding stream. Yarmin rolled to a stop, dust puffing around her. Astrid landed beside her in a gentle rush of feathers, folding her wings with a soft rustle. "Still can't believe you ride that thing," Astrid said, eyeing the chopper. "Looks like it was held together with spit and goblin glue." Yarmin patted the handlebar affectionately. "It's built to last." He loved this machine. Astrid's smile softened. Your father? Yarmin nodded. Taught me to ride. Taught me how to care for something, even when it breaks down. There was a long moment of silence. Astrid didn't interrupt it. She just stood beside her, the wind gently lifting strands of her golden hair, her eyes watching the sky as if trying to find the right words. Then Yarmin turned to her with a smirk. Race you to Sky Song Lake? Astrid's grin returned in full force. You're on, slow poke. And like lightning and thunder, they moved, bike and wing, racing toward the next memory. Chapter 2. Sky Song Lake. Sky Song Lake shimmered beneath the afternoon sun, its surface glassy and serene, broken only by the occasional leap of a fish or ripple of a breeze. The floating isles above cast long, dreamlike shadows over the water, and the distant hum of windrocks gave the air its ever-present melody. Yarmin stepped carefully to the edge of the wooden pier, the breeze tugging gently at the hem of her long, flowing priestly robes. With a practiced motion, she gathered the fabric just enough to lift it above her knees, revealing one smooth, dark blue hoof beneath. She sat down slowly, smoothing the robes beneath her, and leaned forward to dip her hoof into the cool, glassy water. The ripples that followed spread outward in lazy rings, catching the glow of the floating islands overhead. Her fishing rod lay cradled in her hands, line already drifting across the surface. Beside her, a second rod sat defeated on the boards, its line tangled in a glorious mess of loops and knots. Astrid stood a few paces back, arms crossed and frowning at the whole scene like it owed her a duel. I'm sorry, but how does anyone make this look peaceful? I swear this rod is cursed. Yarmin didn't look up, just smiled serenely. It's not cursed, Astrid. You just keep fighting it like it's a battle. It is a battle, the Valkyrie muttered, staring at the tangled reel. And I'm clearly losing. Grumbling, Astrid dropped beside her, letting her legs dangle over the edge of the pier, the soft clink of her greaves meeting wood. Her wings folded behind her with a gentle rustle. There, are you happy? Radiantly. For a while they just sat. The sun warmed their faces, and a breeze rustled through the tall grass and reeds around the lake. It was quiet, earnest quiet, not awkward silence. Astrid looked around slowly, taking it all in. You used to come here? She asked. Yarmin nodded. Years ago, my father brought me here when we first arrived in Outland. Said it reminded him of the wilds he used to ride through back on Draenor. Her voice softened. We camped on that little rise over there, burnt the fish, laughed all night anyway. Astrid leaned back on her hands, eyes turned toward the fading clouds. You were lucky to have a father like that. Yarmin's smile faltered slightly, then steadied. I know. That's why I remember. There was a long pause, the wind carrying the sounds of water and birds. Then Astrid reached into her pack and pulled out a small cloth bundle. She unwrapped it, revealing 2 sweet-smelling pastries, still warm from Stormwind's bakeries. You remembered the honey fruit tarts? Yarmin asked, surprised. Of course, Astrid said, handing her one. I may not know how to fish, but I remember your favorites. They ate in silence, laughter coming easily between bites and swipes of crumbs. Later, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned to firelight, Yarmin lit a small campfire with a practiced flick of her fingers. Astrid lay on her side nearby, head resting on her arm, watching the flames with a lazy smile. Promise me, Yarmin said quietly, poking the fire, if the time ever comes that you need to go, that you'll tell me. Astrid looked at her for a long moment. Her voice was low when she finally answered. I promise. Yarmin nodded, satisfied. The fire crackled, and the stars above blinked into view, one by one. Chapter 3. Flowers in the Wind. The trail beyond the lake wound gently uphill, where wildflowers swayed in waves beneath the floating isles of Nagrand. Soft bluebells, star thistle, and glowing golden fire blooms blanketed the field like nature's own tapestry, shifting with the breeze like they were dancing. Astrid hovered overhead, wings extended but still, riding the air like a feather in a dream. Below her, Yarman rode slowly on her chopper, the engine's soft purr almost reverent in the quiet. She followed the winding path until it broke open into a wide, untouched meadow, the kind you'd only find if someone showed you. She stopped the bike, dismounted, and reached into the satchel at her side. "This is it," she called up. "One of the last untouched herb fields in Nagrand." Astrid descended in a slow, sweeping glide, landing gently beside her. She looked around, eyebrows raised. "You brought me all the way up here to pick flowers?" "Not just any flowers," Yarman said, kneeling among the golden fire blooms. "Some of these are older than the shattering. They bloom once every few years, and only in perfect harmony with the wind." Astrid blinked. "You're making that up." Yarman plucked one gently and held it out. The petals pulsed with a faint blue glow. "Nope." The Valkyrie stared at it, then took it between her fingers with exaggerated care. "Okay, that's actually kind of cool." They walked the field together, Yarman humming softly as she filled a small cloth pouch with petals, leaves, and sprigs of mintshade. Astrid trailed behind, occasionally pointing to things with absolutely no botanical knowledge. "Is this poison?" "That's a thistle." "Okay, but it looks poisonous." Yarman chuckled. "Everything looks poisonous when you're used to fighting dragons." They settled near a cluster of star thistle, sitting on a smooth, sun-warmed stone. Yarman began carefully pressing flowers into the pages of her journal. Astrid watched her work, fingers brushing over the golden fire bloom she'd kept. Its glow reflected faintly in her armor. "You know," Astrid said after a moment, "I used to think I had to always be fighting. That if I stopped, I'd forget why I started." Yarmin looked up, her voice calm. "And now?" Astrid smiled, a little sad. "Now, I think maybe fighting isn't the only way to remember." Yarman pressed one last flower between the pages and closed the book gently. "It's not." The breeze picked up again, lifting the petals around them into the air, tiny spirals of color drifting like soft confetti on the wind. Astrid tilted her head back, laughing quietly as one landed on her nose. "You're going to turn me into a softie at this rate." Yarman smiled. "Good. The world could use more." Chapter 4. The Cliffside and the Stars. The sun was beginning to slip behind the floating isles when they reached the cliff. It wasn't the tallest in Nagrand, nor the most dramatic, but it was quiet, remote. The kind of place you only found if you were shown, or if you needed to find it. And tonight, both of those things were true. Yarman parked the chopper beside a crooked tree, its gnarled branches draped in hanging moss and pale blue lantern buds. She dismounted slowly, robes rustling in the breeze, and placed a hand on the tree's bark with a soft smile. "He brought me here once," her voice was low. "Said the stars here looked like they belonged to us, not the sky." Astrid landed a few paces behind her, wings folding in tight. "He sounds like he knew the good places." He did. They moved together toward the edge of the cliff, the earth sloping gently beneath their feet. Below them, the world stretched out in soft layers of green and gold, and above, the heavens had already begun to bloom with stars. Yarman set out a simple bedroll and sparked a small fire with a flick of light. Astrid sat close, hugging one knee, the firelight dancing in her armor. Neither of them spoke for a while, and then, "Yarman!" The way Astrid said it, carefully, like she was tasting the weight of it, made the Draenei turn. "Mm-hmm. If I don't come back, someday, would you remember this? Not the battle songs or the titles, just this." Yarman's brow softened. She shifted closer and took Astrid's hand, their fingers folding together like it was always meant to happen. I will remember the way your wings caught the wind, the way you laugh when the world forgets how to. I will remember your hands, even when they tremble. And I will remember the peace you found when you stopped searching for war. Astrid didn't speak at first. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a reflection of stars too bright to look at directly. She leaned her head gently against Yarmin's shoulder. Then I think I can fly, without fear. The fire cracked and popped. The night deepened. And somewhere far above them, a trail of stars swept across the sky like a Valkyrie on her final watch. Chapter 5. Wings Beneath the Sky. The morning was too quiet. Even the wind seemed hesitant to stir the grass, as if it knew what was coming. Yarmin stood at the cliff's edge once more, the sunrise slowly bleeding into gold across the horizon. Her long robes fluttered gently around her hooves, and her hands were folded in front of her, still but tense. Behind her, the fire had gone out. The bedroll was empty. She didn't need to look to know who had left it. A soft sound broke the stillness. Wings. Astrid descended behind her in silence, her white feathers catching the morning light like shards of sky. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there, watching Yarmin, her eyes soft and aching. Yarmin turned at last. Is it time? Astrid nodded. No excuses, no delay. Just the truth. Yarmin stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her, slowly, firmly. Astrid folded into the embrace without hesitation, burying her face into Yarmin's shoulder, wings curling gently around them both like a shield. No words were needed for the first few heartbeats. Then Astrid pulled back, just slightly, her hands resting on Yarmin's shoulders. I don't want this to be the last time. Yarmin shook her head. It isn't. Astrid blinked at her. Yarmin's voice didn't tremble. We don't say goodbye here. Astrid smiled, barely, but it was real. She stepped back, wings spreading wide behind her. The wind stirred. The light crept higher, and Astrid lifted off the ground. Yarmin's heart surged, caught between sorrow and something greater. She watched as Astrid rose slowly, wings bathed in dawnlight, golden armor aglow like a promise kept. Then, from just above, Astrid turned, hovered, looked down. Her eyes found Yarmin's, and in that gaze was everything. This isn't a goodbye, her voice rang out like a song on the wind. This is a see you later. And with that, she rose, higher, higher, until her figure was framed by sunlight and sky, fading into brilliance. Yarmin stood alone at the cliff's edge. But she wasn't alone. Not truly. Her heart beat strong. And somewhere in the wind, a whisper lingered. See you soon. Epilogue. The Bloom. Stormwind was always busy. Carts clattered over cobbled streets, griffins soared between towers, and the bells of the Cathedral of Light rang steady with the hour. But inside a quiet upper room, far from the noise and motion, a single candle flickered beside a work table covered in parchment, herbs, and glass vials. Yarmin sat in silence. The room smelled of lavender and parchment, a mix of healing and memory. Her journal lay open before her, a single pressed flower resting between its pages, glowing faintly, still alive in its own way, the golden fire bloom. Astrid had picked it for her. She ran her fingers over its delicate edges, careful not to crush it. There had been days where that grief nearly swallowed her, when she reached for a voice that wasn't there, when she half expected wings to descend outside her window. But grief, she'd come to understand, was just love that hadn't stopped. And love never really did. On the shelf beside her journal sat a tiny carved figure, a Valkyrie with outstretched wings, sculpted from driftwood and polished with care. Astrid's likeness, rough but unmistakable. Yarmin had shaped it herself with the same hands she used to heal. She lit another candle, and beneath the flickering light, she spoke. Thank you for showing me how to be brave. She closed the journal gently and placed the flower on top. Outside, the city stirred, but inside this room, there was stillness. The kind that feels like breath before a song, the kind that lets something broken begin to mend. She looked toward the open window, where a breeze drifted in, carrying the scent of spring. You'll be proud of me, she whispered, and I'll see you again, when the stars are ready. The wind stirred the pages of her journal. The flower glowed a little brighter. And in that quiet room, grief no longer ruled her. Love did. Final entry, Yarman's journal. The bloom is still bright, and the sky is still wide, and somewhere beyond it, wings are waiting. This isn't the end, just the next page.